Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. This is part 2 of our series on mPowered IT. On today's show, we have John Mammon
Thanks for having me, Kenny.
and Mike Stansbury.
Good morning. My pleasure.
If you missed part 1 in our series on mPowered IT, please go back and give it a listen to hear more from John and about mPowered IT services. There's some really good conversations in part 1 that you definitely don't want to miss. For part 2, we turn to a mutual customer of HawkSoft's and of mPowered IT's to learn how mPowered IT is used in a real independent agency. Mike Stansbury is principal of Elite Insurance Solutions in Nashville, Tennessee. And he might, not to be too flattering, but he might be the first guest where there truly needs no introduction. I'm going to do my best. But definitely by the time you're listening to this, Mike will have marked 25 years of experience in the independent insurance space, or in the insurance space in general. I first encountered Mike through his advocacy around data ownership and transparency, which is a huge area of interest for myself and for HawkSoft. Mike has been part of a lot of meaningful conversations on that topic that HawkSoft has hosted or that HawkSoft has been fortunate enough to participate in with Mike. Mike is an extremely well-respected voice in the independent insurance space. I'm very excited to have him on the podcast today and get to know him better. I've picked up something that I did not know when I wrote my introduction, which is I'm gathering that Mike is a music fan. I am musically illiterate, but I do have, thanks to my sister, a very good foundation in country music. So we bonded a little over that at the beginning with the affectionate nickname of Big Kenny, which is a really classic shout out to some renegade country that happened in the early aughts. With that, I'll stop myself before I get too much into that quagmire. I love part 2 of our series because we get to dive into conversations with independent agents. And so I'm just going to kick things off with the really important question that sets the stage for everything. Mike, I'd love to know about Elite Insurance Solutions. How long have you been in business? How many people work there? What do you focus on? What gets you excited about insurance? All of the good stuff.
Thank you very, very much for allowing me to join you. It is really a pleasure to be here and be a part of sharing our story. It's my hope that this is received in a way that will uplift and inspire those listening. So hopefully it's not too much about Elite Insurance Solutions, but certainly about some of the highs and lows and the joy of being in the industry that in. And I'll start with the last part of your question. First, as far as why insurance, and the answer is that it's a noble business. When I was young in the saddle, I really much wanted to engage in business, engage in a community, but also in an area where I felt like my mind could work in an environment that served others. And so Randy Hewlett, the other principal to our firm, and myself began collaborating, and we got our mission statement down to 2 words, which is very, very hard to do. But we worked long and hard at it, and it really is serving others. And that's really what we get our jollies over. We're good at bringing folks into our industry and educating them, giving them the career that we have both enjoyed for a period of time. It's funny how you go from, in my mind, I'm still one of the young ones sitting in the back of the room, but I'm not. And it's interesting to see that transition, as so many of our listeners probably think they'll never get to. And then the other half of the room that are listening here are with me. And it's like, how did I get here? And it's like, the days are very long, but the years are really short. So I think that you'll turn around and enjoy looking back as I am right now in our journey and think, man, I'm really proud of the journey. And I'm not proud of everything because it's filled with mistakes and bumps and bruises, but nobility in being able to be there for somebody, whether they are involved in tragedy of a automobile accident or a business
Hmm.
getting off the ground and going where they need bonding to put together so that they can go out and get their product to market. The diversity of those two things and the complexity of those two things are such a challenge that it is uh, so enjoyable to be a part of. So that's a little brief synopsis of the last part. The bullet points for those folks. Elite Insurance Solutions has gone through several massive growth and then some reduction and then growth as an entity. I founded the organization in 2008. And then my business partner and the other principal joined in 2009. We have gone from the person you're looking at or listening to up to as many as 50 plus. We are down to about 40 employees. We have four physical offices across the middle state, central Tennessee. We have been in multiple states with physical locations. And through growing pains and the like, we have been able to adapt as our industry has changed over my 25 plus years. And in my range for the listener goes from when we took applications with carbon in the middle of the application to totally done through a mobile phone where I'm able to quote, bind, and issue through a cellular telephone. So that's my experience range, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very thrilled to be continuing with the learning process and to be a part of this. So those are the kind of the cliff notes of where we are at Elite, and
Yeah.
just thankful again, Big Kenny, to be here, brother.
That was an excellent explanation of Elite Insurance Solutions and your background. Now, I'd like to fast forward to the point where you first encountered John and mPowered IT. Sometimes agencies don't know. Paul Hawkins' favorite saying is that often agents are too busy putting out fires to grab the fire extinguisher. And so the way I like to phrase this is, how did you know when to grab the fire extinguisher, and what were you looking for when you first encountered mPowered IT?
Uh, Here's some experience that I can share with somebody that might not have had the rounds, and it is a joy to be able to offer this to those listening. Um, John went through a very extensive interview process with me, and um, to say I knew what I was looking for would be an understatement. And the interview, as in most quality interviews, might have taken 30 minutes, maybe. Um, and in part one of this introduction, John refers back to the acumen of the chair and the CIO experience level that all of us would be looking for. Gratefully, I have been able to sit in some chairs along life's journey, which has allowed me the ability to listen and learn from some other executive and C-level type individuals. That has allowed me to glean knowledge so that when I'm in the presence of something that sticks out as an expert, I can identify that. And that's always good when, if you're listening to this and you can surround yourself with a mentor type person, as I have been able to do. When I began interviewing for this role, I terminated the prior chair that he sits in. And that's never fun. But you have to prune a little bit to grow the organization, and so that was a necessary step for our organization in that time. And I was very specific in. Um, I'll never forget it. I'd made a list of the amount of software and technology that my company uses. I think I still have that piece of paper, ironically enough, because in my end of the year planning, I was building a efficiency model, and my folks here hear me say this all the time. We will be nothing if we are not efficient in what we're doing, which is oxymoron, but still, it really does drive the point home of um, I needed to reduce the technology constraints that were being placed on the organization so that we could go do what we do. And we figured that out. We had that in the back of our mind as we were down the river with this. So when John came along in part one, his organization speaks to his background with the independent agency channel. As is the case when HawkSoft came along, it contributes toward the independent agency channel, and both of you went through an exhaustive research that you don't know you went through to be a part of Elite Insurance Solutions, and it's very joyful that I get to call you partner because of the bar that we had put out for what we're trying to achieve. You two both want to achieve that same client experience and serving others mentality, which is how the three of us are on this call so many years later. It is in the end about delivering the experience of the extra scoop, the above all, the best you can as a human being on this spinning patch of dirt to get up and enjoy, you know, your work and your toil at the effort of the day, so that when you come to rest and refresh at your home, you can reflect back with joy and gratification in yourself. And that's how I have been able to achieve getting mPowered IT into Elite Insurance Solutions. Having the same conversations we have with HawkSoft. We still meet quarterly and produce quarterly training with HawkSoft on things I think we already know. But again, it's very important to train over and over again, so that we're practicing the things we need to do, so that when we're outperforming for other folks, we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the classic Rotary saying "service over self."
Well, the four-way test matters. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And I think that totally makes sense. And I am a huge fan of rigorous vetting of any partner into an organization. I do that in our partnership program. You generally have to have a recommendation, an introduction. That was very true for mPowered IT. They were introduced to us. It wasn't a cold call. And so I can appreciate, and I think that is the right approach for an agency to take, is to vet, ask questions, set a high standard, and constantly follow up, re-engage, for sure.
Yeah, if I could chime in there, Kenny, we have our share of vendors too that we use to deliver our services. And one thing that I've learned over the last going near 3 decades now is that if there is a misalignment of values between the organizations, then that is an area of potential risk for the relationship not to work well. And I think, all the organizations that we all represent on this call, are very like-minded in terms of values and wanting to deliver a great experience to our customers. So I think that's when you're like you said, you're a huge fan of exhaustively vetting any partner relationship, and we certainly have been through that with HawkSoft on a couple of occasions for a few different things. But you have to respect that, and all the listeners on the call should do that, because again, what you need to not just be looking for, in my case, the ones and zeros, and what software do you use and things like that. What you really need to be looking for is what are the real values of the company, and that's why in our proposal, the first page is all about our core values. The second page is all about our the customer experience, the extra scoop experience. So I tell people, make sure you read the first two, and the last page is the pricing, and the rest of the middle isn't as important, So I think value alignment is very important when you're talking about looking for a vendor or partner.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of how mPowered IT is used on a day-to-day level within Elite Insurance Solutions, what can your agency today do now that it couldn't before you had mPowered IT?
That was just easy. The necessity of what we had when we outsourced our IT, we can have John's team step into any of our machines where we might have an issue, and we can. John has provided us with software that allows our folks to have his team step right in, diagnose the issue on that. It could be that specific machine. It could be much larger in software nature and things like that. And they can diagnose with certainty of what the problem is, what the strategic plan is to resolve the problem, and give us a timeline or a time horizon for us to expect resolution. Prior to that, we're out here on an island trying to ask a high school kid to figure out, what's the latest trend in Google Analytics, and that's just not going to work. So we've held ourselves to that accord, and John has just smashed it out of the park with what we're able to achieve with that. Where I can take that off of my plate, our production team, our head of sales can take that off of their plate to where we can get back to things we need to focus on, so that if we do have an isolated problem, we have a strategic analysis where we know if it's isolated or if it's a little bit larger in scale, and we can triage to that level from mPowered. That's his design. That's his development for that. And anybody with 5 machines in use needs to understand, if you have yourself and 2 part-time and 2 full-time folks, you need to be listening to this. You don't always have to consider, I got 4 locations and 50 people out there, and think I'll never have to worry about that. You do. You really, really do. And it's scaled. So be at peace with that learning. That's what we're able to share with you today. That's what I want to share with the other folks out there today.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And that is a good exploration of all those benefits that you gain. And I'll again encourage listeners to go back to part 1, because I took a brief detour to explore the idea of a fractional or a part-time CIO, and that conversation absolutely contributes to this in terms of what mPowered brings to an agency. And so, speaking of part 1, fair is fair. We always ask our partners, what is the hardest part about working with insurance agencies? And in the interest of an open, honest, and transparent dialogue, we like to flip the script and give Mike an opportunity to discuss a similar question about mPowered IT. We always preface this by saying price is the boring answer. If everything in the world could be free, that would be amazing. But we recognize that price will always be something that comes and goes as a factor that we would love to change. So setting that aside, Mike, for you, what is one thing that you would change about mPowered IT if you could?
That I could grow Elite big enough to use more of them. That would be the short answer. Their expertise, I feel, is comparable to mine in acumen of the independent agent space. That is a big, big statement and a lot to unpack for somebody who just heard me say that. So I'm going to repeat it. Their understanding of the independent agency space and modeling is very robust. So I wouldn't come in there and say I have language issues, I have vernacular issues, I have personnel issues. I am a small business owner, and I move at the speed of the Starship Enterprise. You get me to slow down, you have done something, and everybody on this call understands exactly. They're finding time just to listen to this podcast, and that I think is spectacular. They are moving as quick as we are, and I would ask them, mPowered or whomever they're working with, to find that provider that works at their speed. They're not going to be able to do it. And the fact that mPowered understands that of us slows us down. If it gets, the situation gets too hot, things get get to the right person fairly quickly. And that's a want, not a need, because the needs are being met by this organization for us, and that's the answer, as delicately as I could put it, because it's not one that I would say, well, I need X, Y, and Z, because I get X, Y, and Z when I ask for it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think that's a testament to the thorough vetting to ensure that they're right for your business. Um, John, how does pace and matching velocity between the businesses that you serve, how does that factor into the work that you do?
It factors in greatly. You know, we're in the problem business, right? Meaning that very much like, you know, an agency's customers, when they're calling in with a claim, right? They're not calling to say it's a sunny day and everything's wonderful, thanks for all you do, right? You know, they're going, hey, I got a problem and I need help, right? So you know, we triage every issue that's every incident that's reported to us, and assign a priority, and make sure that we get to it quickly. Because the reality is that there's no real. I mean, there is classes of problems, right? Like I can't print, but I can print over there, so I'm okay, right? But generally speaking, there's no small problems, right? If my email is not working properly, I'm not able to service my customers. If my computer is locked up, I can't service my customers, right? So there's really no small problems. So we prioritize those and get to them as quickly as we possibly can. We're sitting right now at exactly 5.5 minutes for our average response time this week to all incidents reported. So we know and are acutely aware that when there's a problem, it's not acceptable for that to drag out for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. We need to get to it as quickly as possible and affect at bare minimum workarounds so that Mike and any agency can be efficient, right? So he can't be that, they can't be that if their technology is not working for them in the way that they expect.
Fantastic. I love that you know your numbers. And did you just look at a stat board?
Monitor, yeah.
Yeah, we that's one of the things I miss about working in the office. We always had our product support numbers on a board that we could watch and monitor and evaluate. Now we check in periodically on a dashboard. Yes, Mike?
Just to further expand on that for the listener, John looked at a board and is able to determine his response time. He also provides me at an executive level the ability to go in and see everything I got going on with that same board and that same response time at my level. So I can, at an instant, look at what he just was referring to and see what specific to my organization. Now, he's looking much larger than what I'm looking at, but within his structure and his background, I have that kind of experience to where I can see how many open tickets, what priority they were getting, where they're at in the process, and I can see that and use that, quite frankly, when I have duress. And let me speak to this right just up front. For everybody listening here, you have that coworker that is under duress or stress with something not functioning properly. And in the world of technology, it is way my extended theory of overpromise and underdeliver. That is the mantra of IT. They can't seem to get it right, and when you find those firms like mPowered, HawkSoft, where we're having these discussions to where though we're getting it right, we need to view it like we're not getting it right, or we're working to improve those things so that you make that duress go down, that stress level go down, so that our communication is being received. Again, in the IA space, communication is number one. We have to communicate, and that takes place over a bunch of different, channels: text, chat, podcast, telephone, which and it's probably in that order. But the point that I wanted to bring up and highlight is that firms that have the ability to bypass those numbers straight to us as an organization, it gives us the ability to give reassurance to our coworkers that are in the middle of duress.
Yeah, absolutely. And you gave me, you teed this up beautifully, because my last question is, how would you describe the value that mPowered IT brings to your agency? So expanding on what you just brought up, minimizing that distress, helping mitigate the stress of technology inside an agency. How would you describe that value, or what more would you add to the value?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add to that, my answer, I'm not going to be redundant. You just heard me give you, everybody understood what I just said. Anybody listening to this truly understood what I just said. I'm going to expand on it with just one small extension, and that's compassion. Okay.
Mm.
John and his team handle Elite with compassion, and they understand that. But you've heard him address that when the calls come in. They're acutely aware of those things when they come in there, and they don't come back. And the one thing I ask of our coworkers and the team that we have built here is to walk into their scenario with that same mindset of compassion, which doesn't always happen because there's duress, and that's just the reality of it. You're going to get effective communication, meaning they can hear you and they can interpolate the words you're using to diagnose a problem. You will get that, and that's what we're all looking for in our vendor and our relationships, so that we can turn around and hopefully provide that same service to the community that we're serving. So that's the one thing I want to expand on to give you a bow on this particular relationship. But what everybody listening to this is in search of, those are some of the bullet points that I was in search of and been successful in finding.
I absolutely love that, and I think that I think so often technology seeks to remove the human from
That's right.
business, from a workflow. And I so greatly appreciate you highlighting compassion, which is very much a human to human value, emotion, action, that I think it really highlights what makes mPowered IT stand out for you. And also, in my perspective, what makes independent agents so special, and why I definitely agree with your description of it as a noble business is it's always going to be human to human. We've seen time and again the solutions that are not, that are just your digital direct writers or your disruptors trying to revolutionize the industry. They're, at some point, they will always employ agents. They will always go back to the independent agent channel, because people to people is how things are done and how things thrive. That really was a great bow on this. I have thoroughly enjoyed our chance to speak over the last 2 episodes in this series. I wish that we had hours and hours more to dive into everything else that's running through my head right now. But Mike, I can't thank you enough for taking time away from Elite Insurance Solutions to talk with us. John, the same to you. Thank you so much for taking a break from probably being 100 different companies, chief information officer, and sitting down to talk with us. Thank you both so much. Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the video description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode, as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.